I never imagined that polishing a trophy could unravel a family empire, least of all the one that employed me. My name is Sarah, and for 2 years, the Sterling Mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, had been my gilded cage, a place of silent opulence and unspoken rules. Every morning, as the sun kissed the manicured lawns and glittered off the infinity pool, I'd step through the staff entrance, my worn backpack a stark contrast to the Rolls-Royce in the driveway. The air inside was always cool, faintly scented with old money and expensive lilies, a world away from the humid, bustling streets of my childhood neighborhood in Queens. Mr. Sterling, a man whose name was synonymous with ruthless financial acumen, rarely saw us, preferring to communicate through his steely-eyed executive assistant, Mrs. Albright. He was a ghost in his own sprawling manner, a whispered presence, his power palpable even when he wasn't there. My days were a ballet of dusting priceless antiques, vacuuming Persian rugs that felt like clouds, and scrubbing marble until it gleamed, all under the watchful, silent gaze of antique portraits that seemed to judge every move. It was a good job, or so everyone said. Stable, well paid for someone like me who hadn't finished college but had a knack for making things shine. It was a lifeline, really, after my dad lost his factory job back when I was a teenager, leaving my mom and me to scramble. I knew the value of every dollar earned, the precariousness of every paycheck. This place, despite its cold grandeur, represented security. It was the American dream, viewed from the periphery, through the lint and dust I meticulously removed. I often wondered about the lives lived in these hushed halls, the secrets whispered into silk pillows, the dramas unfolding behind closed doors. But curiosity was a luxury I couldn't afford. My job was to be invisible, a silent maintainer of a world I didn't belong to. My routine was meticulous, a well-rehearsed dance around priceless artifacts and fragile egos. Tuesdays were for Mr. Sterling's private study, a room I usually approached with a peculiar mix of awe and trepidation. It was a monument to his conquests, framed magazine covers with his imposing face, awards gleaming under spotlights, rare first editions lining floor-to-ceiling shelves. The air in there was heavier, thick with the scent of aged leather and cigar smoke, even though he rarely smoked inside anymore. On this particular Tuesday, the late afternoon sun was slanting through the tall windows, casting long golden fingers across the mahogany desk. I was carefully polishing a solid gold paperweight, shaped like a bull, when my sleeve snagged on a loose corner of a leather blotter. It shifted, ever so slightly, revealing a barely perceptible seam in the desk's exquisite carpentry. My heart gave a tiny, involuntary lurch. Professional curiosity, or perhaps just human nature, got the better of me. My fingers, usually so steady, trembled as I pressed gently. A small, hidden compartment clicked open. Inside, nestled amongst velvet, was not jewelry or a stack of cash, but a small, crudely carved wooden bird, perhaps a robin. Its colors faded, clearly handmade, clashing completely with the sleek modernity of everything else in the room. Beside it lay a burner phone, a prepaid device common enough but jarringly out of place here, and a single sepia-toned photograph. It was of a little girl, no older than 5, with wide, earnest eyes and a missing front tooth, clutching a worn teddy bear. Her smile was innocent, almost ethereal. A wave of unexpected emotion washed over me, a pang of something akin to sadness, or perhaps just deep disquiet. This didn't fit, not with the polished trophies, not with the calculating financier. This felt raw, personal, vulnerable. Just as my fingers reached out to touch the photo, a shadow fell over me. The scent of an expensive cologne, not the usual lily, filled the air. My head snapped up. Mr. Sterling stood there, framed in the doorway, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. His eyes, usually distant and indifferent, were now sharp, piercing, locked onto the open compartment, then to my outstretched hand. The little wooden bird, the photograph, the burner phone, They all seemed to scream their presence. "Get out," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Pack your things, you're fired." The words hung in the air, heavy and final, crushing the fragile security I had built for myself. My carefully constructed world, my safe, silent existence, shattered around me in an instant. The immediate aftermath was a blur of humiliation and disbelief. Mrs. Albright, her usual composure replaced by a tight-lipped efficiency, handed me my final paycheck and a terse severance letter. No explanation, no chance to plead my case, just the cold, hard reality of my dismissal. "Mr. Sterling does not tolerate intrusions," she'd said, her eyes avoiding mine. The implication was clear. I had crossed a line, a sacred boundary in the Sterling Empire. As I walked out of the mansion for the last time, the weight of my backpack felt heavier than usual. Each step away from that gilded cage, a step into an uncertain future. The manicured lawns, the sparkling pool, the expensive lilies, they all seemed to mock me now, their perfection a stark contrast to the unraveling chaos inside me. The image of that little girl's innocent face, the worn wooden bird, the burner phone, they replayed in my mind like a broken reel, each detail burning into my memory. What was it? Why was it so secret? And why was seeing it enough to cost me everything? My small apartment in Queens, usually a comforting sanctuary, now felt like a cramped reminder of my precarious financial situation. Bills for utilities, student loan reminders, the rising cost of groceries. They flashed before my eyes, an urgent, unsettling litany. The security of the Sterling job had allowed me to push these anxieties to the back of my mind, but now they crowded in, suffocating. I spent the next few days in a haze of worry, endlessly scrolling through job postings, my resume feeling thin and inadequate. The domestic work market was tough, especially without a glowing reference from my last high-profile employer. Each rejection email felt like a punch to the gut. I tried to focus on the practical, on finding a new income source, but the mystery of the study kept gnawing at me. It wasn't just losing my job, it was the abrupt, almost brutal way it happened, the sheer panic in Mr. Sterling's eyes. It suggested something far more sinister than a simple breach of privacy. I knew deep down that something was profoundly wrong. What would you have done if you saw something you shouldn't, turned away, pretended it never happened? I tried. I really did try to put it all behind me. For weeks, I pounded the pavement, applying for every administrative assistant, receptionist, and cleaning position I could find. I even spent a disheartening afternoon at a local temp agency, watching younger, more polished women walk out with promising leads, while I was offered low-wage, temporary gigs. The financial strain was starting to show. My savings, modest to begin with, were dwindling faster than I'd anticipated. I started making instant noodles for dinner, skipping my usual Starbucks coffee and dreading the arrival of the mailman with his daily dose of bills. During those long, anxious nights, the image of the little girl in the photo, her innocent smile, would flash into my mind. I'd try to rationalize it. Maybe it was an old family photo, a memento of a lost relative, but the burner phone, the secret compartment, the look on Mr. Sterling's face, they didn't fit that narrative. They spoke of concealment, of something hidden, something illicit. I remembered a story my dad used to tell me about integrity being the only thing you truly own, the one thing no one can take from you. He'd lost his job at the auto parts factory when I was 15. The whole plant shut down, moving overseas. That sudden, brutal economic shift had plunged our family into crisis. I remembered the shame in his eyes, the way my mom worked extra shifts as a cashier, her hands raw from handling money and customers. We'd eaten a lot of budget meals, worn hand-me-downs, and learned to stretch every dollar until it screamed. It taught me the fragility of financial security, the ruthlessness of the world, and the importance of a clear conscience. I understood then that some things were more valuable than money, like a good night's sleep. I didn't want to carry this secret, this unease, with me. It felt like a weight, a moral debt. One afternoon, sitting in the public library, ostensibly searching for job leads, my fingers drifted to the news archives. I typed in Sterling Corporation. Dozens of articles popped up, tales of mergers, acquisitions, philanthropic donations, political influence. But then a name surfaced, one I hadn't thought of in years, but one that stirred a vague, unsettling memory from local news channels back when I was a kid. The Vanished Heiress. It was a story from nearly 15 years ago about the disappearance of a young girl, Amelia Vance, the daughter of a rival pharmaceutical magnate who had mysteriously gone missing right before a hostile takeover bid by Sterling's company. The case had gone cold. No body, no ransom, just a vanished child and a triumphant Sterling Corporation emerging as the sole beneficiary of Vance Pharmaceutical. The articles mentioned the family's grief, the police investigation that went nowhere, and the eventual quiet settlement. There was no direct link to Mr. Sterling, nothing explicit, but the timing, the corporate battle, the vanished child. A chill snaked down my spine. The little girl in the photo, the age range, the period of the disappearance. It was too much of a coincidence. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Was the child in that photo Amelia Vance? Could Mr. Sterling, the pillar of high society, be involved in something so monstrous? The thought was terrifying, outlandish even, yet it clung to me with chilling persistence. I scrolled further, finding old forum discussions, amateur sleuths dissecting the case. One comment, buried deep in a thread, caught my eye. Didn't Amelia have a unique little wooden bird that her nanny carved for her? Always carried it. My breath hitched. The wooden bird, the one I'd found in the secret compartment. It couldn't be. It was too specific, too perfectly aligned. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. My attempt to put the past behind me had failed spectacularly. The truth, or at least a terrifying glimpse of it, had found me. I tried to reach out to Sarah Jenkins, a former cleaner at the Sterling mansion, who had always seemed a bit more rebellious than the rest of us, less cowed by Mrs. Albright's stern demeanor. I found her number through a mutual acquaintance and called, my voice tight with a mixture of fear and urgency. She met me at a diner in Queens, a greasy spoon with chipped formica tables and endless coffee refills. "Look, Sarah," she'd said, stirring her coffee, "Mr. Sterling is a dangerous man. You saw something, you got fired. Count yourself lucky. Don't go poking around. You don't know what you're up against." Her words were a warning, laced with an underlying fear that I recognized all too well. She spoke of rumors, hushed whispers among the staff about other employees who had been let go for knowing too much. Stories that usually ended with them disappearing from the domestic circuit entirely, sometimes even leaving the city. The implication was clear. Sterling had eyes and ears everywhere and a long reach. Her caution, meant to protect me, only fueled a deeper sense of dread and determination. It cemented my belief that my hunch was right. This wasn't just a powerful man with a temper. This was a man with dark secrets, willing to go to extreme lengths to protect them. The innocent face of the little girl flashed in my mind, a poignant reminder of a life possibly stolen. It wasn't just about Mr. Sterling anymore. It was about her. And then, a few days later, a strange man approached me near my apartment building. He was impeccably dressed, spoke with a smooth, almost hypnotic tone, and handed me an envelope. "A token of goodwill from Mr. Sterling," he said, his eyes hard and unblinking. Inside was a cashier's check for $10,000. No strings attached, he claimed, just a generous parting gift. It was a blatant attempt at hush money, a chilling confirmation that Mr. Sterling knew exactly what I'd seen and was willing to pay to ensure my silence. The amount to me was a fortune, enough to cover months of rent, bills, maybe even a down payment on a beaten-up used car. For a fleeting moment, the temptation was overwhelming. $10,000 for doing nothing, for simply forgetting, for forgetting Amelia Vance. But the image of that small wooden bird, the photograph, and the newspaper headlines of a vanished child burned brighter than any dollar sign. My stomach twisted with disgust. How could I take money, tainted money, when a child's fate hung in the balance? What kind of person would that make me? Is truth always worth the cost, or is ignorance truly bliss? The encounter with Sterling's associate and the hush money offer was a turning point. It solidified my conviction that I couldn't just walk away. The $10,000 sitting on my kitchen counter became a symbol of the moral crossroads I faced. It represented the easy path, the path of self-preservation, of burying my head in the sand and allowing a potential injustice to remain unaddressed. But every time I looked at it, I saw Emilia's face, her innocent eyes staring back from the faded photo. I imagined her, a little girl, snatched from her world, perhaps even from her family. I thought of her parents, living 15 years with an open wound, never knowing what happened to their child. Could I really turn a blind eye, knowing what I knew? The thought made my skin crawl. It gnawed at my conscience, turning every waking moment into an internal battle. My own past, the struggles my family faced, the value my dad always placed on integrity. It all resonated deeply. He had lost everything, but he'd kept his dignity. What was money, really, if it meant sacrificing that? I started doing more research, not just online, but through old newspaper archives at the library, piecing together fragments of the Vance disappearance, cross-referencing names and dates. I discovered that Emilia's father, Thomas Vance, had died a few years after her disappearance, a broken man. Her mother, Eleanor, had retreated from public life, rarely seen. Sterling Corporation, meanwhile, had soared, acquiring Vance Pharmaceuticals and expanding its empire exponentially. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit, forming a horrifying picture. It painted Mr. Sterling not just as a ruthless businessman, but as a man capable of unimaginable cruelty, using his power and influence to cover up a heinous crime. My fear, which had been a constant companion since my dismissal, now intertwined with a fierce sense of indignation. I knew the danger I was in. I was an insignificant former cleaning lady, going up against one of the most powerful men in the country, a man who could make people disappear, financially or otherwise. I had no resources, no connections, just a handful of clues and a burning desire for justice. The thought was terrifying. I pictured myself alone, vulnerable, against Sterling's army of lawyers, fixers, and security. What if I was wrong? What if I was just a paranoid former employee, bitter about being fired? But the evidence, however circumstantial, felt too strong, too specific. The wooden bird, the photo, the burner phone, they were screaming at me. I realized that my biggest flaw wasn't curiosity, but my past tendency to avoid conflict, to stay small and invisible. This time, I couldn't. The decision solidified over a restless week of sleepless nights and endless cups of lukewarm coffee. I couldn't just be a witness to a potential crime, not when I held the threads of truth in my hands. The $10,000 from Sterling remained untouched, a silent testament to my resolve. I decided to take a calculated risk, a gamble that could either lead to justice or destroy what little I had left. I reached out to a freelance investigative journalist whose work I admired, a woman known for her tenacity and her willingness to tackle difficult, high-profile cases. Her name was Anya Sharma, and her byline often appeared in the kind of independent online publications that weren't afraid to challenge the establishment. I sent her an anonymous email detailing what I'd found, the hidden compartment, the wooden bird, the photograph, and the disturbing connection to Emilia Vance. I attached the scanned newspaper articles I'd collected. I knew it was a long shot, but it was my only shot. Anya responded within hours, cautious but intrigued. She wanted to meet, but only in a neutral, public place. We met at a bustling coffee shop in downtown Manhattan, the kind where whispers are swallowed by the din of espresso machines and chatter. I told her everything, leaving nothing out, from the moment I stumbled upon the secret compartment to the hush money I'd refused. As I spoke, her eyes, sharp and intelligent, never left my face, analyzing every tremor in my voice, every detail. She asked pointed questions, her legal pad filling with notes. She didn't promise anything, acknowledging the immense power of Mr. Sterling and the potential risks. "This could be dangerous, Sarah," she warned, her voice low. "He won't take kindly to this." The fear was a cold, constant knot in my stomach, but for the first time in months it was tempered by a fragile sense of purpose. I was no longer a passive observer. I was an actor in this unfolding drama. We decided on a plan. Anya would discreetly investigate, verify my information, and try to find additional evidence. I would keep the burner phone and the wooden bird safe, as they were the only physical links I had. It felt like stepping onto a tightrope stretched over a chasm, but the alternative, silence, was a fall into a different kind of abyss, one of regret and complicity. My emotional climax came not in a dramatic confrontation, but in that quiet decision to trust a stranger, to hand over the fragments of a truth that had haunted me, knowing it could unleash a storm. It was the moment I chose conscience over comfort, justice over fear, breaking free from the paralyzing grip of Sterling's power. The storm, when it broke, was not a sudden tempest, but a creeping dread that enveloped my life. Anya's initial investigations unearthed more disturbing connections. She found an old, discredited private investigator who had worked for the Vance family shortly after Amelia's disappearance. A man who had hinted at a cover-up before his own career was mysteriously ruined. She also found obscure corporate filings that showed a complex web of shell companies, some of which had been quietly used by Sterling Corporation to acquire Vance Pharmaceuticals, and one of which had a single, untraceable expenditure around the time Amelia vanished. It was barely a ripple in Sterling's vast financial ocean, but to Anya it was a lead. As Anya dug deeper, I began to feel the chilling shift in my own life. My job search, already difficult, became impossible. Every interview I had seemed to hit a wall, as if an invisible force was blacklisting me. My landlord, who had always been flexible with my rent, suddenly became rigid, demanding payment on the dot, hinting at complaints about my presence. Even my local grocery store cashier, a friendly woman I'd known for years, gave me a strange, almost pitying look one day, saying, "Heard you're having some trouble, honey. Hope things turn around." It was subtle, insidious. I felt watched, constantly. Every shadow seemed to hold a pair of eyes. Every passing car felt like it was slowing down for me. The burner phone, the wooden bird, and the faded photo, now tucked away in a lockbox under my bed, felt like both a burden and my only defense. The moment of raw emotional collapse came one evening when I received an anonymous text message. "Some things are better left buried, Sarah. Think of your family." It wasn't a direct threat, but it implied knowledge of my family, their vulnerability, and it broke something inside me. All the fear, the isolation, the relentless pressure coalesced into an overwhelming wave of despair. I crumpled to the floor of my tiny apartment, sobbing uncontrollably. The brave front I had put up, the unwavering resolve, shattered. I was just a girl from Queens, and I was up against a titan. What had I done? Had my quest for justice put my own loved ones in danger? Was Amelia's story worth this unbearable cost? You tell me, what would you have chosen? Anya, however, proved to be an unwavering ally. The threat to my family, coupled with her growing evidence, spurred her to act. She crafted a meticulously researched exposé, intertwining the narrative of Amelia Vance's disappearance with Sterling Corporation's ruthless acquisition and my own startling discovery. The article, complete with scanned images of the wooden bird and the child's photo, with appropriate disclaimers, dropped like a bombshell on her online platform. The initial silence from the mainstream media was deafening, but the story went viral, picked up by independent news outlets and social media, igniting a firestorm of speculation and outrage. The Internet's collective memory proved to be a powerful, uncontainable force. The pressure mounted, forcing a reluctant mainstream media to finally acknowledge the allegations. Sterling Corporation's stock plummeted, investigations were launched, and Mr. Sterling, the untouchable magnate, was finally forced to confront the accusations publicly. He denied everything, of course, dismissing the article as malicious slander and me as a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. But the seeds of doubt had been planted deeply. The public, always eager for a fall from grace, turned on him with a vengeance. The justice, however, was not clean or absolute. Mr. Sterling, leveraging his vast resources and legal team, managed to avoid criminal charges for Amelia's disappearance, citing insufficient direct evidence and the passage of time. He spun a narrative of corporate espionage and a tragic misunderstanding, but his reputation was in tatters. His empire, while not crumbling, was severely wounded, tainted by scandal. His once impenetrable public image was permanently fractured. He became a pariah in the circles that once revered him, forced into a semi-retirement amidst the wreckage of his carefully constructed facade. For me, the aftermath was a quiet, lingering echo. I found a new cleaning job, in a smaller, less opulent home, a place where the air didn't hum with unspoken secrets. I was no longer afraid, but I wasn't entirely free either. The experience had carved a permanent mark on my soul, leaving behind a wisdom born of fire and a profound understanding of the hidden costs of truth. The mansion stood, gleaming in the morning light, but the shadows it cast would never truly lift for me.